Now the entire world is talking about AI.
Any innovation, anything new which comes, will always have benefits and risks.
What are your take on the rise of this AI, digital therapeutics, and tech-driven intervention?
One area where people, even doctors, are worried about is, will it replace us? I don't think it will replace us. So what I say is, it will and then I put a hyphen place.
Wow.
Which means it will place us in a different higher plane in that value chain.
How open are Indian doctors with these terms like AI or using tools in their day-to-day practice?
See, Indians are very good with software and IT and all that stuff. So yeah.
And what is the word of caution while using AI?
A lot gets published, and maybe if this machine has not been trained in the right way, it will look at all the possible evidence.
So what is your message for the next generation of leaders who are trying to build something in healthcare?
First of all, why healthcare? Secondly, in healthcare, which areas? That means obviously those areas should have a significant unmet medical need. As you know, if you want sustainable, profitable growth, you have to...
What are the final words of wisdom or a mantra that you live by?
For me, it's something which my parents had brought me up on, and that is
Now, moving to the next section, sir. I have worked in the pharmaceutical industry with various different cultures. I worked with US-based, then Japanese-based. So I have seen the diverse leadership. I have seen the working culture was different. I have seen how people actually the same task, maybe with different therapy and with different product, but still the way they used to handle things was very different. And I then realized that it is somehow related and because of the leadership at top. So leadership becomes a very integral part of pharma industry, be it medical affairs, pharmacovigilance, clinical research, or overall pharma industry, or be it any sector. And if we have true leaders in our life, so the people or the successors or the juniors will get inspired and would like to imbibe those characteristics or features in their career, and everyone wants to become a great leader. And you are a great example of that. And I want to know from you, what are the qualities that distinguish a true leader from a boss? What is that difference? And second, what is the impactful medical leadership, especially in the healthcare sector, that will change the healthcare ecosystem in general?
Yeah, this is a very important question because, see, leadership, and this is something I learned when I attended some training workshop way back when I was in Pfizer. So what that individual told us is that a leader is a person who, very simply, brings out the leadership in every one of his team members. So it's as simple as that. So the leader needs to focus on that part. A leader, of course, as you said, needs to be inspiring. That means people should look up to that individual. And for that to happen, that individual also should have not just what people call an executive presence, but people should believe that, yes, this person deserves that particular role. So when you say medical leader, how I would look at it is, you have to be a leader in even the medical space. You can't tell yourself that, no, I am now the medical director, a general manager kind of role. I don't need to know too much about the products, or, I have people who will be experts at those products. So I just need to know things superficially and just get work done through the people. Increasingly, what I've observed, and this is something which, of course, in my case, I've always wanted to continuously be as good as I was, even as a medical advisor. But it's important for medical directors and leaders to also be a leader in medicine itself. That means you have to be good at your medical subject matter expertise.
Yeah.
But then it's also about not just getting work done through people, but getting people done through the work that you delegate. That means how they develop, how they grow. So there again, you should know exactly what to delegate and to whom at what stage. So there is something known as situational leadership, and where we are taught how to evaluate, like your report, your team member, at what level of development is he or she at? D1, D2, D3, D4. And based on that, you have to adopt the right style of leadership. So there's S1, S2, S3, S4. So it's like S1 for a person who is D1, S2 for a person who is D2. Now imagine if you apply the wrong style of leadership. So first you have to be able to diagnose that your report is at what level. So if it's a D2, use S2, don't use S3 or S4. Of course, I can go into details of all this. It may not be the right forum to do it. But what I'm trying to tell you is that is also extremely important. Of course, a leader needs to have a strategic bent of mind, the oversight and direction that you give your team. You should be able to even predict what will happen in the future, that proactively prepare for it so that you're planned when you're prepared when it happens. And sometimes you're even leading change and not just managing change. So that part is important. But about this direction and oversight also, it's important that you tell your team exactly what needs to be done, the final outcome. But then you also have to get out of the way. Too much of micromanagement doesn't help. Let them then think in terms of how they should go about it.
Yeah.
And then oversight in the sense, as in when they need your help, of course, you should be available.
Yeah.
But that kind of thing, because see, ultimately, whatever may be your vision, it has to be their vision also. And they have to own it as much as you do. And when it comes from them internally, positionally, then, it will happen.
Yeah.
Because if it's just forced upon people, they won't really do it. That's why people say, now you mentioned about culture. So there is something known as culture can eat strategy for breakfast. That means you may have the best of strategies and even above that, the vision. But if you don't get the buy-in of your people, then that strategy is of no use. So that culture, if you go back to your microbiology days, you have this petri dish and you have the culture medium.
Yeah.
So obviously you have to have the right ingredients there which are conducive to growth, and then only those colonies would grow. So similarly here, now imagine a petri dish. That's the culture of your company. If you have the right elements there, then it will facilitate a kind of a growth mindset, and everyone grows and develops, because that is the way to really bring people together. Because unless you can galvanize them towards that common cause or common goal, it won't happen.
Yeah. Great thoughts, sir. I have taken a lot of value from this and surely would like to share with our audience. A leader has to be a growth enabler. He should have an ability to identify talents and strategize or customize his approach as per the reportee or the team member. So that's a brilliant point. What you believe leader should lead from the front or from the back?
So it's interesting that on the one hand, yes, people say that the leader, you should exemplify and then you should lead from the front and things like that. But there's another way of looking at it is also, it's not always like, when these battles happen, wars and things like that, it's not that these generals are always at the front line. So sometimes it's also important for you to have your team's back. That's also important. And it's also about how well do you really plan, and all you're doing is basically protecting our people, because even though they are in the front line, as long as you've taken care of what kind of problems they can have, then they are able to then do what they do best without having to worry about these things. And when I said have their back, what is important is, suppose things don't go well, so rather than blame them, and not blame, that word itself, ME is at the end.
Oh,
So if you blame or shame, ultimately it reflects on you.
yeah.
So how I look at it is, medical also, ME is right in the beginning.
Oh, wow.
So ME. So it's like you take that onus, you take that accountability, and automatically they also feel empowered and accountable. Otherwise, they also, the moment something goes wrong, they'll just upwardly delegate it or whatever. So it's extremely important for a leader to be there for his team whenever they need it. So that's 24/7. But without interfering also too much, just setting up everything so that you're setting them up for success, that kind of thing. If so, that you can do well, they would appreciate that, rather than all the time coming and checking as to whether things are happening.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, sir, for such a nice, insightful discussion on leadership, and I think leadership is very important. A good leader can change the game completely, and we have seen successes just because they had a good leader. So thanks for that. Sir, as you know, now I'm working with startups, and specifically I'm focusing on startups in healthcare. So not many times founders, they ask me questions regarding collaborations of startups with the pharmaceutical industry. They are big players or big giants. So how open pharmaceutical industry is as far as the innovation is concerned, or is there a platform existing at this point in time with any of these companies wherein something called as e-cell or entrepreneurial cell, which encourage innovation, and they are able to showcase their ideas and get supported, be it a funding support or technical support or expert support. So is there something do exist at this point in time, and how open the pharmaceutical industry is with innovation and startups from the healthcare point?
Well, this is interesting that you brought up this word starter.
Yeah.
The reason I'm saying this is when I joined Boehringer Ingelheim
Okay.
in 2010. At that time in India, we were very small. So people actually called us a starter,
Oh,
MNC.
okay.
But in the world, of course, Boehringer Ingelheim has been around since 1885.
Yes.
But we were literally in that startup kind of thing. And even our managing director was not really from a pharma background.
Okay.
And yet, for him to then take up this role, that itself was a big risk that I think Boehringer Ingelheim took. And of course, it paid off. And even for us, like I left Pfizer where I was absolutely stable and doing well, and then came here to literally set up the medical department from, I would say, just one or two people, and then developing it into something like eventually 75. Of course, many of them were also, how do I put it, in-sourced colleagues. That means they're not
Okay.
on the roles of
Yeah.
Boehringer, but with a CR.
Yeah.
But the point I was trying to make is, so I have been through this startup kind of environment where all of us from a very small base, we actually grew up, and then eventually people started saying that these people have become from startup to an upstart. That means, especially in diabetes, really with, of course, the molecules were also good. But in terms of whatever we did in Boehringer Ingelheim over those 8 years, I think we really showed the world that how a startup MNC also can become an upstart. So I'm absolutely for this intersection or this collaboration between big pharma or, I mean, Indian companies also, as you know, there are MNCs who export their generics to major markets. So they are also MNCs. And they're also, I would say, big pharma as far as India is concerned. So this kind of collaboration between startups and pharma, I think, is something which is happening and will continue to happen. I agree that pharma generally is a little more cautious, a bit wary, so they're not maybe as quick to adopt certain innovations. So, for example, even AI and ML, etc., have advanced far more maybe in other sectors, and
Yes.
it is even in pharma, but maybe not as quick. Now, I remember when I was in Pfizer, and I'm sure this exists in other companies also, they had this, what they called an incubator, where they would actually open, uh, they were open to ideas from these smaller
Yeah.
startups and others who would want to come up with new ideas as far as innovation was concerned. And then Pfizer would allow them to really incubate that. Of course, there would be some kind of a partnership that eventually, if this comes to market, then in terms of, the royalty sharing, things like that.
Yeah.
Or first right to refuse, etc. So that kind of stuff is also there. And I would say in every area, not just in medical, there is an opportunity for this kind of startup collaboration with pharma. Now in India, what has happened is maybe one is they are a little bit wary, especially if it's an MNC, because then their parent body has to approve. So it's not as simple, it's not decentralized. But I think in Indian companies, it's much faster, where if they really like a particular idea, at the most, I think the startup needs to also be a little bit like that pharma company. In the sense, you have to put yourself in each other's shoes
Yeah.
to understand that why will this pharma company want to invest in this startup. So if they can see in that business case that the return on investment is something which is definitely, it's a win-win kind of a situation, I'm sure they will be more open to such startups, because everywhere, I mean, whether it's in even patient support programs, because see, what we need to understand is as far as patients are concerned, compliance or adherence
Yeah.
to that particular medication and lifestyle modification is extremely important. But imagining chronic ailments, if people are going to stop their treatment after, say, 2 months or 6 months, it won't help. So, how do I ensure that once this patient is on a particular medication or lifestyle modification, that patient continues for life? Because that is when, okay, on the one hand, you may get customer lifetime realization or value. But the second is, even from the patient perspective, he or she will be at goal, controlled, which means no complications.
Yeah.
So that way, even the overall cost of illness would come down. And it's like saying that I may be diseased, but I need not be deceased from the disease. Means I don't have to die because I have hypertension or diabetes, which because it's uncontrolled, then I get complications and then I die. Rather than that, I can still die a natural death as long as the condition which I'm living with. So rather than call me a diabetic, it's better to say a patient living with diabetes. No, that's a better way, because patients also, why should they be
Labor.
classified or labeled? Oh, I'm a patient because I have.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing. So I definitely feel that lots of innovative ideas come from these startups. It's just that pharma also, now you mentioned about the cell. Now in Boehringer Ingelheim, I remember we did have this thing about being intrapreneurial. That means all employees also were encouraged to be, how an entrepreneur is, but within the company. And then they would be even given some kind of encouragement, like the Shark Tank approach and all that. But somehow that also didn't really take up, because see, employees, all said and done, one is I can give you an idea, but then ultimately I have to take that idea all the way to fruition. And that sometimes I wonder, but I have so much other work to do. So it's better if I give the idea and let somebody else take it forward. But here it's like you only have to do it. So there are some challenges that way, but I feel between, pharma and startups, that will have to happen, because big pharma will not really be able to do so many things that a small, more agile and efficient startup can do for that pharma.
Pharma company. Okay. So the next question is related to founders, especially coming from a non-medical background or non-life science background. For example, an engineer who wants to build a startup in healthcare. They struggle with regulatory compliance. They struggle with clinical validation. And these are the steps that they have to cross. There is no bypass, or there is no, kind of discount given on this. So what are your thoughts on the same? How careful they should be while building a business in healthcare, from the regulatory compliance perspective, and getting it clinically validated from the right stakeholders, be it patient or hospital or doctors. So what are your thoughts on that?
So, see, engineering, as you know, even your genetic engineering people talk about. So, engineering and medicine, anyway, there is this thing where gradually more and more of engineering is coming into medicine. And I've also read of these collaborations between, say, an IIT, say Mumbai, and Tata Hospital.
Yeah.
And they have come out with, I think, that card.
That is it.
So, there are lots of such partnerships which are there. And gradually people are understanding, I think because of COVID and whatever happened during COVID, there's much more scope for this biomedical research that people talk of. And I heard even Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, they have, I think, now come out with a course, which is actually a combination of the two. Yes. So which means everyone has realized this, that there will be this close collaboration between the two.
Yeah.
And even for doctors, they need to understand. And even now, engineers can contribute much more. And now, also obviously AI, and so that's again computer science, data science, and AI, ML, etc. So this part is anyway there. Now, if, as you said, the founder is non-medical sector, he can definitely set up his business. But only thing is, these two areas, the regulatory and the clinical part, naturally he will need to have some experts from that background in his company who can then bridge the gap. So somebody who can really explain that from a regulatory perspective, like earlier it was only for drugs, but now even devices are regulated, etc. So what are those challenges? And similarly clinical, because ultimately, if this is going to be used in patients, then you have to have some Indian patient data to justify why an approval is mandated. That I think they can, and they are doing that.
Yeah, I have seen many of startups dying or struggling just because they didn't take advice or guidance from a medical expert or regulatory expert who can actually bring some value to the table and guide them properly. Now the entire world is talking about AI and many tools people are developing. What are your take on the rise of this AI, digital therapeutics, and tech-driven intervention in the healthcare system?
See, how I see it is, first of all, I don't know whether I should call it artificial intelligence. I know it is called artificial because the other one is real or natural or human intelligence. And we all know that AI also has come because of human intelligence itself. But there's nothing wrong with AI in the sense, I know any innovation, anything new which comes will always have benefits and risks, pros and cons. And even in medicine, for a doctor to prescribe any product, only if the benefits are more than the risks would he prescribe, otherwise he won't. So similarly here, we need to use AI intelligently.
Yeah.
And then it will definitely help. Now, one area where people, even doctors, are worried about is, will it replace us? I don't think it will replace us. So what I say is, it will and then I put a hyphen place,
Wow.
which means it will place us in a different, higher plane in that value chain, such that maybe now we can do much more with our brain. See, actually, we use only about 10 to 20% of our brain. And secondly, we don't use both the sides of the brain optimally. So there's a lot of scope for improvement there. And if maybe some activities which we were doing, if machines can do it and they can be taught and they learn and they do it for us, it will free us up for doing these things. So how I see it is, it's not going to replace us.
Yes.
You mentioned digital. Now, again, I'll bring it to medicine.
Yep.
Digit in medicine means a finger, correct? So digital is also about finger or touch. That means if you're able to touch your customer.
Oh, yeah.
And when I say touch again, I keep using what Alec Padamsi once had told us when he had come for the Viagra launch in Pfizer. He said there's something known as emotional retina. What he means is, suppose I'm seeing someone. So those impulses come through the pupil, they fall on the lens, get focused on the retina, and the retina, you have the optic nerve, goes to the brain. And then from there, depending on the kind of visual stimulus that you've got, there could be some, how do I put it, spills over to the nearby amygdala, which is emotion, and hippocampus, which is memory. So if it really touches these two, then what happens is it's a more powerful memory trace and you remember. So by emotional retina, what he means is, imagine if you can touch your customers emotionally, that person is going to remember. So it's like enhancing brand recall. So whatever we do with digital, if you can really touch your customer's emotional retina, then you bring him closer to you. And then a time will come when you don't have to keep on bombarding him with stuff. He will come to you and ask you for things. And that is when the real outreach or whatever has happened. Otherwise, it's only one way and doctors don't like it.
Yeah.
But coming back to AI, ML, and I call it a broader thing, which is data science. And by that, what I mean is so much of data is generated, both in the real world and in randomized controlled clinical trials. Now, imagine from that data, if using all these tools, intelligence, etc., if you can actually try and cull out from that data baseline characteristics of the participants in those studies and their outcomes, both safety, efficacy, etc., and you try and correlate, you will realize that there are some patients in all these studies who have done excellently in both safety, efficacy. Some safety was good, efficacy was not that good. Third group, vice versa. And fourth group is also important. They did not respond to your, even within the label, within that indication.
Yeah.
Now, do we really know, first of all, do we analyze that data and do we tell our doctors, even within the label, these kind of patients don't even use our product because they are less likely to respond. Others you may, but then first take him to the first group where optimal response, safety, efficacy. that when he starts using your product, then obviously he gets a good experience and that will make him keep on using your product. So what is important is to be able to create a profile or a substrate of that patient, so that when a doctor then sees his patient, if he can identify, okay, this kind of a patient, this drug is, this patient is most likely to respond optimally to that drug. That is what we need to help the doctor, means match. And that's why when we keep saying visual aid, visual aid, visual aid, the essence is to aid the doctor in having the right visual profile of that patient.
Yeah.
And if that you do, it will help, rather than all the time go and tell the doctor, my drug is better than somebody else's drug because of this and that. Because even if you have a head-to-head study, it is a parallel group design.
Yes.
So patients in one arm have never been exposed to the drug given to patients in the other arm. So we don't really know these patients, if given that drug in the other arm, how would they have responded? That means per patient, it's like an N of 1 randomized controlled trial. Whether this patient would respond better to drug A or drug B, we don't know. So rather than keep on saying that my drug is better than somebody else's drug, what is important from a clinical perspective is to identify which patient would respond best to which drug or combination or what sequence, etc. And that is what companies should actually come together and in a spirit of what I call competitive collaboration. That means you don't need to compete with your competitors, you can collaborate. And this way, ultimately, because see, all of us say we are patient-centric. So if all of us are patient-centric, then why do we fight with each other for that patient?
Yeah.
You have to look at it from the patient's perspective, and as a doctor, let him decide. You provide him with the right information to empower him to make the right decision for that individual patient.
Yeah.
And leave it at that. Because, then your credibility goes up, the doctor begins to look at you, and that is again where medical can make a big difference. Because they have, doctors have something in their mind about marketing, sales, and other functions, but medical, they believe, is absolutely upright and, balanced and fair and unbiased. So we need to be champions of that.
Yeah. And how early a medical or medical expert should be involved into the startups built by non-medical
As early as because as you only said, regulatory, clinical, so anyway they are required. But even in trying to understand that if this particular engineering kind of initiative has to be applied in healthcare for people, let's not even call them patients, because as you only said, that patients, why should I identify a person by his disease? And incidentally, the word patient also comes from a Latin verb, pati, pati, not the other pati, but this pati means to suffer. So what we should be doing is trying to remove the suffering from that patient. So the PATI, if you remove, then he's no longer a patient. He's a person, a unique individual defined by other characteristics and not because he has diabetes or whatever. So at least this much if we can do. And in Hindi, as you know, suffer means journey. So suffering could also mean the journey of that patient. So our job is to help the doctor in removing the suffering of that patient and restoring that patient back to his usual self, because that is what he is defined by, not by his disease.
So I can sense a lot of empathy, and empathetic leaders are very few in industry. And I think that should be our core. Whenever we talk about patient-centric approach, I think empathy plays a vital role. If we have that desire to bring something great in and improving lives of our patients or individuals suffering from various conditions, I think people will start working towards that common goal, and good people will start approaching you rather than how I can contribute to your startup and be a part of it, because they see a lot of value in impacting millions of lives suffering from the conditions. So great thoughts on that, sir. How open are Indian doctors with these terms like AI or using tools in their day-to-day practice? Are they very open, or there is still a mindset issue? What are your thoughts on this, and what are the challenges, and what is stopping them?
See, the older doctors obviously are not going to be, very malleable to this change. It will take more time, and they also have this suspicious kind of thing that will AI then replace a doctor and those kind of things. They just cannot except that, treating a patient with AI alone without it's like self-driven cars or those kind of things. So it'll take longer. The younger doctors actually are more open to all this, and some of them are heavily into all this. But there again, all that I was trying to tell you is the balance that is
important. Yeah.
So as long as we understand where AI, ML can really help, and as long as we use it well, then it's fine. It's like an antibiotic also. If you don't use it well, it will become useless.
Correct.
It's the same thing. So as long as people understand that, it's fine. Now here, unfortunately, it will take some more time.
Yeah.
Maybe people abroad are a little more open to it. But I feel, Indians are very good with the software and IT and all that stuff. So yeah, I think Indian doctors also, the ones who are graduating now, will be more open. The ones who are already firmly into practice, it's more difficult to change.
Yeah.
Mindset.
Yeah. And what is the word of caution while using AI in clinical practice?
Word of caution, one is if you're using,
For example, a person,
patient data, etc., then naturally we have to be very careful with data privacy laws in the country. And I know abroad there's HIPAA and things like that, but here also India is pretty strict about protecting the privacy of. So that we need to keep in mind. And AI ultimately, as people say now, what you're programming that particular, even if you come out with an algorithm, ultimately it is what is the information based on which it is
trained by how you're
Correct.
training it.
So it's like evidence based versus evidence biased. The difference based and biased is only that I.
Yeah.
So again, it's that I. Is that I able to sift through the wheat and the chaff and then only take out the real true evidence? Because a lot gets published, and maybe if this machine has not been trained in the right way, it will look at all the possible evidence. Now, some of that evidence is not good quality evidence. So you need to be able to even select that out. And then based on the really true information and evidence, you make your, so that way, if you're programmed to do it, yes, an AI trained algorithm can also do it. It's not.
So future is bright, but dear doctors, please be open for using or incorporating AI tools and such amazing innovation in your healthcare practice, because it is not to replace you, but to facilitate and make your life more simpler and more comfortable, because Indian doctors are heavily loaded with patients. So I think many tools are really playing a vital role, especially for general practitioners who are working in a rural sector wherein there is only one doctor for 50, 60 villages. I think there comes a huge role of AI, and please don't run away from this. Try to learn. So with that, let's quickly jump to the very interesting section of our today's podcast. And I'll request Dr. Viraj to answer the questions. These are rapid fire questions, sir. So I'll take two names. You have to just pick one. So let's start our rapid fire. Big Pharma or biotech startups?
Big Pharma.
Innovation or compliance?
Compliance.
Okay. Real world evidence or clinical trials?
Clinical trials.
And faster launches or deeper studies?
Deeper studies.
Disruption or collaboration?
Disruption.
Then FDA first or global first?
You mean the state FDA here?
Yeah.
Or DCGI?
Yeah.
Global first.
Okay. Then digital therapeutics or traditional medicine?
Digital therapeutics.
Okay. Preventive care or precision medicine?
Precision medicine.
Okay. AI-powered diagnostics or human intuition?
AI-powered diagnostics.
IPO or strategic acquisition? This is related to
strategic acquisition.
Then unicorn dream or sustainable growth?
Sustainable growth.
All right. This is very interesting. Physician-led startups or founder-led healthcare startups?
Physician-led.
Okay. Then regulation enabler or a bottleneck?
Enabler.
Academic validation or market traction?
Market traction.
Then this is the last one. I know the answer, but still. Patient outcomes or profit margin?
Patient outcomes.
Any day.
No, but here also, na, patient outcomes, if they're good, naturally for that company also, they will get more in terms of revenue.
Yeah.
And from that revenue also, as I said, if you're compliant and this, you will get more profits. But what is important is a significant portion of that profit is plowed back into research. So for such companies, why those products should do well is because it will help in the continuing service to mankind, because then they'll come up with newer and newer innovations. That's why these companies are like 125 years old, 150 years old.
Wow. Moving to next section. This is the wisdom section, and our audience would like to know you as a person in more details. So looking back your career, what is that one decision that truly shaped your career? We are very eager to know this, and we don't want a generic answer. We want, there must be one
Give
point.
me a specific answer. So first part would be what made me take up MD pharmacology instead of MD, what I wanted, which is MD medicine and actually treating patients. And that I told you
Yes.
in the beginning itself. And once I joined, what shaped, now I'm not saying that it was a good thing that I did, but you must have realized that this guy has never really gone abroad the way many others have gone and actually worked abroad.
Okay.
I have preferred to work in India only, although I've been abroad and
Yeah, like for business travel.
correct, but I've never really wanted to, although I did get opportunities in Pfizer, BI, etc.
Okay.
But the reason I didn't want to was actually twofold. One is I felt that if I go, then who will look after my team? So it was more that people-centric kind of thing, that I have selected people, and now just because I have a good opportunity, I go to Belgium or I go to the US.
सब कौन सोचता है?
So I used to think from their perspective and I would stay behind.
Okay.
And the second, and this is also important, is I felt that, see, for an Indian to go abroad and do well, it is not that difficult, because I've seen it's a much better life. Work-life balance also is there, all that. And somehow I felt in India, if you can stay and yet do well, that for me is something. And I've always found that working in India, the Indian market and all is so difficult. Going abroad is not that difficult. It has its own challenges, no doubt, but it's easier.
Yeah.
Here I felt it's more difficult. And that's the reason I have never really wanted to go abroad and settle down there or work. So that kind of shaped my career, because I'm in India only 27 years later.
Yeah. Great. So what is your message for the next generation of leaders who are trying to build something in healthcare? What is that message would you like to convey?
The message would be, one is, why do you want to do this? So if it is, as you said, profit driven and all, then I would say don't look at it more from a profit perspective. Look at it more from in health. First of all, why healthcare? Secondly, in healthcare, which areas? That means obviously those areas should have a significant unmet medical need, where this kind of investment is required, because I know with investment we say the higher the risk, the higher the returns.
Yeah.
So anyway, pharmaceutical investment is a high risk kind of investment. But at the same time, if it meets a significant unmet medical need, if whatever you're doing is something that will make a significant difference to the way that particular disorder or whatever is managed, and it is again significantly different from, that means there is a very clear-cut differentiation which is clinical, not just pharmacology or esoteric. So these are the things, ultimately, then it will give you that value. It will give value to the patient, community, healthcare ecosystem also.
Yeah.
And it will give you also a lot of value. And as you know, if you want sustainable, profitable growth, you have to plow it back into, that way you'll give back to the community, because ultimately you are serving the community. Community is also helping you.
Yeah.
So this has to continue.
Oh.
So if you have that kind of a mindset, then yes, you should. And think of it in the long term, because in the short term, yes, you may become a unicorn and then you might suddenly collapse. So you need to have the right foundation and all that. But what is most important is why.
That why you have to evaluate yourself.
People typically talk of what, how, and why. How I look at why, WHY, is the W is the what, H is the how. But even if I remove the W and H, I will still get a Y, which is WHY also. So ultimately, it is a why that.
Yes. Wow. Lovely. So I think founders who are building healthcare businesses, you got your answer. First, understand your why and then only start. Don't follow mad rush. Don't follow just because people are doing, and healthcare has a huge scope. That is not the way healthcare businesses or startups are going to make success here, because healthcare industry is different from other industries. It is compliant heavy. It is a well regulated market. It has to be passion driven founder and a collaborative effort. It's an area which requires a lot of patience, perseverance, and passion for building something amazing for our people, benefiting their lives. We are towards the end of our today's podcast, and I have taken a lot of value from this, and I myself have learned many things from Dr. Viraj. And for our viewers who would like to approach you, what is the best way to get your guidance, your time, your few minutes of wisdom?
So, I mean, the usual ways are obviously phone number and email. The only reason in the past, in fact, in my companies, I have given my phone numbers to the entire field.
In the
force
cycle,
that- No, and to the entire company, so that anybody who wants to contact me anytime, I should be available to them, including even in the clinic. So when a medical rep is talking to the doctor, he asks a question. If they can connect and that to using their iPad or something, then we can even talk to each other across the space.
It is very rare, sir.
So I used to just share. But nowadays, what's happening is we get all kinds of prank calls. And so therefore, now I don't know whether I should circulate my number. But the email ID, of course, is, I think, good enough. And then based on that, we can get in touch. And and I would like, now that I've retired, I would like to use the remaining time that I have to give back.
Wow.
Because earlier I used to be so busy working, I don't know how much I had given back, but now I feel I can really give back. And one more point I wanted to add when you spoke about the founders, these healthcare startups. One more point I wanted to add is that, see, one thing you have to remember that all of us can become patients. So whatever we do is for that patient, but typically we always think of the patient as somewhere outside, but we also can become. So as long as you think of it that way, then I think you will approach this healthcare startup right.
Yes. Before closing our today's session, what are the final words of wisdom or a mantra that you live by?
That I live by. So for me, it's something which my parents have brought me up on, and that is work is worship, which means I know people think of work as a 4-letter word, and similarly, boss is a 4-letter.
Yes.
But it all depends on how you look at it. So if you look at your work as something which is worship, as in you're doing something that God has outsourced to you, and you're doing His kind of work, then you will not look at it as if, it's,
It's like a task.
yeah.
Task
Then
assigned.
you'll begin to really like what you're doing. And the moment you get into that kind of mindset, then it's no longer work. So then you don't really do it expecting that I should get this much out of it. The only expectation you'll have is from yourself. So what can I do which is even better? That kind of thing drives you rather than, I did so much and the company did not do enough in terms of, that doesn't come into your thing at all. You just focus on and that is something which will never end. It is a continuous kind of thing, because for as long as you're alive out here, you have to do what God wants you to do. It's like sometimes people have this thing about, I'm on contract and I'm not on roles employee. So I keep telling them that all of us are on contract. And God has outsourced His work to us. So all of us are on a contract. And when that contract expires, we expire. So till that time, you have to keep working. So if you have that kind of attitude towards work, then you will not hate work or all this work-life balance and this and that. See, if you enjoy what you do, then you won't consider it as work. So it's like your entire life, you do whatever you want, what you enjoy doing, rather than, I have to do something and then 9 to 5 I do that, then I can enjoy. It's not like that. You can continue 24 hours also, but if you have the right attitude, you really enjoy it, and you think of it as something you're doing for him, then it's totally different.
Wow. Thank you, sir. I can't thank you enough for uh, for the wonderful insights. Not only from the professional perspective, I gained a lot, and I'm sure our audience will also, when this podcast will get released, will learn a lot from your thought process, from your experience, from the way the things has to be tackled, and how all of us can become a great team player and a great team leader as well. So thank you so much for your time and for sharing those valuable insights with us. And we are looking forward to have many more such sessions with you. And thanks a lot.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sonali. And as I said right in the beginning, you are an example for a role model for them to emulate. But I've also learned a lot in our interactions. And that's the other thing about, when you think as if you're teaching someone, you actually learn a lot.
Yes.
So that is the whole beauty of teaching, that you feel as if you're teaching, but you learn from your audience.
Very nice. Well said. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.